We're at Bellagio, ready to focus again on playing cash games to start the year after a long December spent grinding tournaments. I binded the 510 for 2,500, that's the max. There are multiple tables running. I'm looking forward to playing the game that I tend to be most comfortable in, with a lot of familiar faces. We start the session at 1:11 p.m. A little while in, we're dealt 8-3 offsuit in the big blind. It's not the prettiest of hands. I'm looking for any reason not to play it, but the small blind only limps in. I check. We're heads up in position. The flop comes King 8-3 rainbow. All of a sudden, it's a beautiful hand. The small blind checks. I bet 20. The small blind calls. There's a decent chance that he has a king since half the 8s and 3s are accounted for and there aren't any draws present. The turn is the 6 of spades, putting a flush draw out there. The opponent checks. We're going to be firing the entire way unless something significant changes. I bet 40. No hesitation from the small blind. He calls. It's feeling more and more like we're up against top pair. The river's the 9 of hearts, a handful of straights get there, and there are plenty of 2-pair combos that beat us, but I'm still confident that we're best. Small blind checks. This 9 isn't scary enough to make me pump the brakes. We're going to be going for value. I bet 110. It's a sizable bet, but the opponent doesn't care. He calls right away. We show him our 2-pair. The small blind reveals that he called all 3 streets with King 4 offsuit. Our read was correct that he had top pair, and he didn't want to part with it. We didn't have a strong hand to begin with, but we improved and capitalized on the situation to be up a little on the day. Next, we're dealt ace-9 suited on the button. We're going to be playing this one. The cutoff shows interest. He raises to 30. We can call or 3-bet, which gives us the chance to win without seeing a flop. Often, our re-raise will result in us isolating the cutoff to play a larger pot from in position with a hand that does decently well post-flop. I take the aggressive approach and 3-bet to 100. This should clear out the blinds. The small blind has proven to be tougher to get to fold than originally anticipated. His name's Matt. He's a viewer from Nebraska. Matt shouldn't really be cold calling any 3-bets. He should be 4-betting and folding. He chooses to call anyway. When he does this, he's going to have hands like queens, jacks, and 10s a lot. Maybe some ace-king or ace-queen as well. The cutoff calls for 70 more. We're going 3 ways to the flop. It comes king, king, jack with 2 hearts and a spade. Similar to the dozens of times I tried speed dating, we don't connect very well and have multiple opponents. It checks to us. It's tough to get a bluff through 2 players. I'm not going to get out of line in this instance. I check back to see a free card. The turn is the deuce of diamonds. It's a blank. The small blind checks again. A second check from him indicates that he probably doesn't have much. The cutoff checks as well. I doubt that he has anything all that great. We can occasionally have quads, jacks full of kings, kings full of jacks, and trip kings. Our check back on the flop doesn't necessarily preclude us from having a monster. I make a small bet of 90 to try to clear out some small and medium pocket pairs that are currently 3rd pair. I might even play this way with aces. The small blind isn't letting go of his cards as quickly as I'd hoped. He calls the bet. He could definitely have queens or 10s. I might have to fire one more bet on the river to win this pot. The cutoff folds. It's down to heads up. The river is the ace of clubs. I was planning to bluff if we didn't improve, but now the plan changes since we've got quite a bit of showdown value and can beat the hands that I put the opponent on. The small blind checks. I doubt he'd be able to call another bet with anything that we're beating. I check back. Matt reveals that he has pocket 10s. We show that we got there on the river to scoop a nice multi-way 3-bet pot. Matt made a speculative call on the turn that almost worked out for him, although he would have needed to call a river barrel to get to showdown if we didn't improve. It's a fortunate run out for us though. After switching tables, we pick up ace-jack offsuit, the first hand dealt at the new location. The straddle's on. I raised to 50. The under-the-gun straddler calls for 30 more. We're heads up in position. The flop comes king 10-4 with 2 spades. We've got a straight draw with 1 over. The opponent checks. 2 Broadway cards on board is good for us as the pre-flop aggressor. I bet 80 to keep the pressure on. Under the gun will have a lot of combinations that completely whiff this flop. Winning with no resistance is a good result. Under the gun isn't going to let us have it. He calls. He might have a draw or a pair of some sort. The turn is the ace of hearts, giving us top pair to go along with our straight draw. A 3rd Broadway card isn't generally going to be great for our opponent. He doesn't appear to like it much. He checks. A lot of the time I tend to check back when we drilled top pair after semi-bluffing on the previous street, like I did with ace-9 suited earlier, but we have removal to the straight. There aren't that many hands that I'm concerned about the opponent having that'll check raise us. He can still call bets with plenty of worse combinations containing flush draws or combo draws. I bet 200 for value. Under the gun has something that he's contemplating calling us with, but he appears to be frustrated with the turn. Ultimately, he folds. It isn't a massive pot, but we get a warm welcome to the table, taking this one down. We're hovering around even when we're dealt ace-10 of clubs under the gun +1. Under the gun raises to 30. We can split between calling or 3-betting to isolate the opponent. I call. We're not the only customer. The small blind calls as well. We're going 3 ways to the flop in position. It comes 10-9-9 with 2 hearts. We've got top pair, top kicker. The small blind checks. Under the gun makes a tiny wager at 30. There are too many draws out there. Our top pair is even vulnerable to being downgraded if additional overcards come out. I raise to 100 to deny equity and make it less enticing for either opponent to stick around if they have hearts and or overcards. Small blind folds. It's 70 more for the initial preflop raiser. He calls to see the turn. We're heads up. I'm hoping that we're going to see a brick. The dealer puts out the 5 of diamonds. It adds another flush draw, but other than that, it's safe for us. Under the gun checks. He's not going to have too many trip 9 combos when he opens from early position preflop, especially when we're holding the 10 of clubs. He'll only have a few that probably would have re-raised us on the flop, so I mostly put him on a pair of 10s, drawing hands, or there's some chance that he could have an overpair. I bet 210 in order to charge worse 10s that we're beating and the opponent's draws. It doesn't look like we're going to get raised. If the opponent calls, we're going to check back nearly all rivers because drawing hands won't be putting in any more money unless they improve to beat us, and overpairs probably won't be folding to a 3rd barrel. Under the gun calls, we need 1 more brick. The river is the 5 of spades. It's pretty much a brick in my book. There aren't a lot of 5s that our opponent will have other than ace-5 of hearts after calling our raise on the flop. Unfortunately, both the ace and the 5 of hearts are unaccounted for. Under the gun decides to lead for 400. It's hard to piece this one together.
Guess you just have like ace-5 of hearts? This is weird.
It seemed like we were ahead on the flop and turn. All the major draws missed. This could be a last-ditch effort for the opponent to try and steal the pot if he's thinking we both could have had draws and have now both missed. This bet could be some sort of blocker bet with ace-10 or king-10, in which the opponent is naming his price. If he gets raised, he'll fold. I'm too curious.
Alright, call.
You're called. There's a 9.
Yeah, no, that's good. The opponent wins the pot with jack-9 of spades for a full house. He played his trip 9s patiently, and it pays off for him as he wins a substantial amount of chips from me, but my parents didn't give me the name Bradley Revenge Owen for no reason. After adding on for 800 more, we're dealt pocket aces in middle position. Under the gun straddles on every hand now. Under the gun +1 raises to 50. It's the same opponent who beat us in the previous hand that we went over. We're going to get him. I 3-bet to 150. When we're 3-betting as the second player to act pre-flop, it won't come to a surprise for most players at the table that we've got a monster, but maybe we can get some action. In particular, we want our dollars back from the initial raiser. Under the gun +1 calls for 100 more. We're going to play an inflated pot heads up against our nemesis as we take the best hand to the flop. It comes 5-3-3 rainbow. It's a sweet one for us. There's almost nothing to worry about. Under the gun +1 checks. We want to keep him in with his entire range, which should contain a lot of middle to high pocket pairs that are drawing nearly dead. I down bet to 110 for value. If under the gun +1 has 6s through jacks or queens, we're going to be hearing from him. Even if he has overs with a backdoor flush draw, he may be tempted to call when he's getting over 3-1 to see the turn. Under the gun +1 disappointingly folds. We don't get all of our dollars back that we lost in the previous hand. We recover a nice chunk though. Here we're dealt ace-5 offsuit in the under the gun straddle. The button raises to 50. I've noticed that he's been opening fairly wide with combos that are nothing to write home about. My mom's been telling me for a while to stop writing home about hands anyway. She's tired of hearing my bad beat stories. The big blind calls. He's the opponent that we need a little more revenge against. In the past, I've called a lot in this situation with ace-5 offsuit to close the action and see a flop, while occasionally mixing in 3-bets with a suited version of ace-5. When we look up this spot in GTO Wizard, after the button raises and the big blind calls, we're supposed to 3-bet ace-5 offsuit over a third of the time. Right now is better than most other times since the button tends to play a wide range, and even more importantly, we need to punish the big blind for beating us earlier with trip 9s. That really wasn't a cool move by him. I 3-bet to 250. The button is supposed to part ways with about 2/3 of the garbage combos he raised with. He folds. We only need to get through one more opponent for our squeeze to be successful. There's no need for the big blind to be a hero. He folds as well. Our 3-bet attack works out just how we drew it up to add about $100 to our stack as we're on the comeback trail. In this one, we pick up pocket 10s on the button. The cutoff gets things started with a raise to 50. Again, we find ourselves in a situation where we can call or 3-bet. I call. The problem with calling is that we're likely going to get one or more of the 3 players behind us to call, but tens doesn't do too poorly multi-way, especially when we're in position. There's a decent possibility that we'll have an overpair to the flop, and if we can hit a set, having more potential customers to pay us off is beneficial for us. Small blind calls. By the look on the big blind's face, he's either having difficulty digesting his last meal or he's going to 3-bet. He doesn't take out any Imodium, instead he takes out raising chips, 3-betting to 250. Our hand flops well and is under-repped, so I'm not inclined to fold. The cutoff calls for 200 more. It's unlikely that he has us beat because we can pretty much rule out him having aces and kings when he doesn't 4-bet. The big blind was set up well for his squeeze, so he doesn't necessarily have to have a monster in order to make his play. Tens might be the best hand, or we could be flipping with ace-king, so I'm tempted to back 4-bet. The problem with that play is that the big blind is supposed to be 3-bet squeezing as a bluff with a lot of combos like ace-10, king-10, queen-10, jack-10 suited, so when we have removal for those hands, it's more likely the big blind didn't 3-bet light, and as mentioned earlier, our hand does fine multi-way with its set potential. I call for 200 more. The small blind doesn't want to miss the party. He pays the $250 door fee. We're playing a rare 4-way 3-bet pot, and we're in position with over 1,000 in the middle already. The flop comes queen 9-8 rainbow. We've got middle pair and a gut shot straight draw. The small blind checks. This flop kind of crushes everyone's range, so any bet made should be assigned a lot of weight because it's hard to get a bluff through 3 people when nearly everyone could have a set. The big blind is fearless. He bets 400. He's going to minimally have top or an overpair, if not a set of queens. While I'm considering whether or not we should call one time to see if we can improve, the cutoff raises to 1200. The cutoff will almost never be bluff raising in this instance. He could have ace queen, but I think he'd mostly call with that hand. It's way more likely that he's got a set of some sort. Our decision becomes much easier. I fold. The small blind also folds. The action gets back to the big blind. I stop recording at this point. The big blind calls to 1200. The turn is another queen. The big blind checks. The cutoff jams for 2050, and the big blind tank folds. The cutoff shows that he had pocket eights for a flopped set and turned full house. I imagine the big blind had aces, kings, or maybe even ace queen. It's time for a double board bomb pot. We've got king 6 offsuit on the button. 6 of us put in $30 each and go straight to 2 flops. The top one comes 5-3 deuce with 2 hearts. We've got a gut shot straight draw with 2 overs and a backdoor flush draw. The bottom one comes king jack rainbow. We've got trip kings. Holding only 2 cards, it's tough to be as strong as we are on both boards. Under the gun bets 50. We don't want to start blasting away with raises because we don't really beat any other combos containing a king, since we could easily be outkicked, and all worst kings have a pair on the top board or an open-ended straight draw, while we'll likely be chopping the bottom board against a hand like king 5 down to king deuce anyway. I call. An added benefit to calling is that we can maybe induce another player to call, so if we can win half the pot, it'll result in us profiting more money than if we win half the pot against just one opponent. The small blind and big blind fold though. It's down to heads up. The top turn is the 9 of hearts, giving us a flush draw. The bottom turn is the 6 of spades, giving us a full house. As long as we're not up against king jack, we should win at least half the pot. Under the gun bets 200. We have one board locked up with a ton of potential on the other board, and we've got position. I call to drastically under-rep our hand strength and keep the opponent's bluffs in, but I'm not worried at all. In fact, I've got very devious plans for the river, whether or not we improve. The top one is the 3 of diamonds, which is disappointing because I really wanted to improve there. The bottom river is the 4 of spades, which is a great card because we retain the second nuts. The opponent swings for the fences, putting out an unexpected overbet at 1200. There's a common tactic used when you have one board locked up and you want to put your opponent to the test by making a massive wager in order to get him to fold if he's not strong on both boards. It's extremely effective, particularly in double board hold'em bomb pots when it's much tougher to be strong on 2 boards compared to PLO double board bomb pots. The problem for the opponent is that we have the perfect hand to employ the same tactic and fire right back at him. We've got 2390 total, and we're not going to be folding. We're not going to be calling either. The only hand that I expect to get snap called by that we're losing to is king jack, which is the nuts. It'd be a complete disaster if we run into that combo. We fade the snap call, so I know for certain that we're at least going to win half the pot. The reason I jammed and the reason it puts the opponent in such a difficult spot is because we're holding the king of hearts. If he has trip kings with the ace of hearts, for instance, he has to be concerned that we have king 6 or king 4 of hearts that scoops. Pocket jacks, pocket sixes, and pocket fours would scoop as well. The opponent is thinking for a long time, which is a phenomenal sign for us. We're free rolling the bluff shove at this point. If we get called, there's essentially no way that we'll win on both boards unless the opponent happens to have king 4, so we're rooting for a fold. It's really not that much more for the opponent to call in relation to the size of the pot, so he must have really gotten himself into a pickle. Looks like we've got king jack, pocket jacks, king 3, ace king of hearts, king 6, or some other king with 2 hearts. I'd make the same shove with pocket 9s or 3s as well. After over a minute and a half of tanking, the opponent makes up his mind. Unfortunately, he calls.
Shove it up, I'm sure.
The opponent has pocket aces with the ace of hearts. We put him to the ultimate test. He had an incredibly difficult decision to call fairly light considering there are so many combos that scoop against him, with king x of hearts being the main ones, particularly after I call the turn and then jam over a massive sized river bet. Although we don't get the opponent to lay down aces, our shove is a play that I'm proud of because recognizing the situation almost allowed us to win an extra $1,500. It doesn't quite work out this time, but we at least gave ourselves an opportunity to win a lot of extra money. A half hour later, we play another double board bomb pot, and this one we're 8-handed with queen 4 diamonds in middle position. The first flop's ace king 6 rainbow. We don't have much going on for us there. The second flop is queen 8-4 with 2 hearts. We've got 2 pair and a backdoor flush draw. Under the gun bet's 100. We're only medium strong on one board, and we have 7 opponents, so I wouldn't mind folding a hand like this if we didn't at least have a backdoor flush draw on the top board. If under the gun or someone else has a hand like pocket 8s or queen 8, we're not going to have a very good shot at winning even half the pot, so we want to try to avoid those types of situations. This is one of the worst hands that I'm willing to see the turns with, but I'll stick around for one reasonably sized bet. I call. We don't want to get raised. The button looks like he might want to put in a raise. He calls as well. 3 of us are advancing. We need to improve, otherwise we won't be putting in any additional money. The top turn is the 6 of hearts. It doesn't help us at all. The bottom turn is the jack of hearts, completing the flush draw as well as the straight draw. Now I want nothing to do with this pot because we're likely drawing dead on the top board and could be drawing slim on the bottom board. Luckily, under the gun seems to be concerned as he checks. We're not going to get out of line. I check. The button bets. He can have the pot. He checks back, which is interesting, but I'm still not too excited. The first river is the queen of spades. We pick up a pair that's unlikely to be good, and now we have fewer full house outs on the second board, so it's kind of a bad first river. I didn't say that we have no full house outs on the second board though. The bottom river is the 4 of clubs, giving us a boat. Not only do we improve, there's actually not a single hand that beats us on both boards. The top queen ends up being extremely significant now. There's no possibility that we're up against pocket queens. Pocket aces, pocket kings, and pocket 6s don't beat us on both boards. Neither do pocket jacks or pocket 8s anymore. We're beating all flush combos. We're beating ace queen, ace 4, jack 10, etc. on at least one board. Under the gun checks, we have 2 options to make some profit. The first option is to bet small to try and get called in 2 spots, but if we just get called in 1 spot, it doesn't help because we'll very likely only win half the pot. I employ a similar tactic that we used in the previous bomb pot hand. I go large with a slight overbet of 600. There are a couple of good outcomes. One is that we get both opponents to fold a hand that they're beating us on the top board with, so we win everything that's in the middle. Or 2, we get someone to call who has a worse hand than us on both boards, like 8-4 or the 10 high flush. This is a really unique situation that's fun to be in. The only disaster would be if one opponent calls with a hand like pocket 8s and the other player calls with jack 10 or trip 6s or something like that, but as long as we get one person to fold, we're guaranteed to win at least half the pot, and it's very unlikely we get called in 2 spots after a check through on the turn. The button reluctantly folds. The under the gun player puts on his Sherlock Holmes outfit that he carries around with him for situations just like this one so that he can try and figure out exactly what's going on. If he calls with a flush, we could scoop, and if he folds a hand like ace 10, that's a huge win for us as well. The opponent calls, we turn over our full house and pair of queens. The opponent reveals ace jack of diamonds. It's almost the exact type of hand that we were targeting to try and get a fold. We put tons of pressure on the opponent, but he called our overbet anyway with a speculative hand. I'm disappointed our play didn't work out as we'd hoped.
I call you.
It's another play that I'm glad we made because I don't really expect to get called by a hand that's hoping to only win half the pot. His kicker doesn't even play on the board where he was strongest, so if I had a hand like queens, ace queen, ace 8, ace 4, or 6-4, I either scoop or 3/4 him. That's a good amount of combos that beats him everywhere. Maybe I should have bet an amount like twice the size of the pot in order to really ensure that we get folds, or we completely punish the opponent when we actually have a monster on both boards. In back-to-back double board bomb pots, we make good efforts, but we don't get rewarded, and we're still stuck a bit. There's a good time to mention ClubWPTGold.com, the brand new site for US players and soon Canadians, where we can play for real cash prizes. I'm regularly on there playing with other ambassadors. Usually I'm in the 1, 2, 4 sweeps coins game, but there are plenty of smaller stakes games, which is a great way to sharpen skills with minimal risk. These are a few fun hands that I recently got involved in on the site. It is a completely legal way to play poker when you're not able to physically make it to the poker room, or if your live table is incredibly boring, you can fire up ClubWPT Gold on your phone. The site is in phase 1 right now. If you've already signed up using promo BRAD, you have early access and can play on the site. If you haven't signed up yet, I have a link down below in the description box. If you sign up using my code, you'll be able to play on the site the day after registering. There are also giveaways you'll be eligible for if you use my code. It's pretty easy to get started. There are 2 types of currencies to play poker with, gold coins and sweeps coins. Gold coins are not redeemable for cash, but if you want to try out the site, playing with gold coins is a good way to get comfortable playing online. I pretty much play exclusively in the sweeps coins games. If you want to add sweeps coins, which is the more important currency, you have to buy the gold coins in order to get the sweeps coins. Here I'm buying gold coins, which come with 500 sweeps coins for the price of $499.99. Once you've completed your payment and you're in the lobby, you can either play with the gold coins that again don't have redeemable cash value, or you can switch to the sweeps coins tables where the coins are redeemable for cash once you play through your chips. After you've gotten in enough play with your sweeps coins, which is easy to accomplish, you can then redeem sweeps coins for cash prizes. You just need to link your bank account and then you'll be able to send money there. Hope to see you on the site soon. Next, we're dealt pocket 8s on the button. Under the gun +1 limps in for 20. He's a recreational player. Sometimes these guys like to get tricky and limp re-raise with aces, but often they're limping with medium strength or weaker holdings. I raise to 100 in order to isolate the opponent or take down the pot without seeing a flop. The under the gun straddler calls. This is a little interesting. Under the gun +1 is going to put in additional chips. In fact, he 3-bet jams for 770 total. He's representing aces. I'm not sure I believe him though. The problem is that we're likely flipping or we could be crushed, and we have another player who we have to be worried about as well. The under the gun straddler may have called our raise to 100 as a trap, knowing that there was a decent possibility under the gun +1 would be jamming. It's too risky to call the all in. I fold. I'm not too thrilled to have to do it, but it needed to be done. Under the gun makes the call. They're heads up in a big all-in pot. The flop comes ace-9-3 rainbow. It's not a good one for our pocket 8s. The turn is the 10 of diamonds. We'd have 4th pair going into the river if we stuck around. The dealer puts out another 3. It's hard to imagine that we would have won this one given the run out. The players are asked to turn over their cards. Under the gun +1 has to show first. He reveals ace-queen offsuit. He limp 3-bet jammed with the hand that we were flipping with, and he improved, so he would have taken all of our money, but he ends up not having the best hand.
I got lucky one time.
The under the gun straddler turned a set of 10s and rivered a full house to beat ace-queen. He had our pocket 8s beat the whole way and said that if we had just called the jam for 770, he was going to back 4-bet rejam. We would have had to have folded our 8s at that point anyway. I'm glad that we escaped losing the minimum, but we're still not winning on the day. Here we pick up ace-4 suited on the button. Remember, we're playing 5, 10, 20 every hand, so it's a larger than average game. I raised to 50. The big blind is a pro from Belarus, who's a very nice guy who I've known for a long time. He 3-bets to 210, knowing that I might be opening light on the button. We've got one of those quintessential 4-bet bluff hands since we have removal to aces and ace-king, while we still have a combo with plenty of playability post-flop, since we have the ability to hit flushes and straights using both cards, and we connect with both low and high boards. I 4-bet to 560. The big blind should have a wide range of hands that'll 3-bet us with that we'll now have to fold to our wager. He'll also have some hands that'll punish us for our aggression. I'm forced to fold to the 5-bet shove. I'm not getting away with anything. It's been frustrating that our opponents keep showing up at the top of their range this session. Now we're dealt 7-5 suited in the under the gun straddle. I added on for another 700, so I'm in for 4,000 total on the day. The opponent from the last hand raises to 50 from middle position. It's only 30 more for us to close the action with a fun combo to see a flop with. I call. We're heads up out of position. The flop comes ace-7-7 rainbow. We drill trips. It's a nice situation for us to possibly win a big pot to mitigate today's loss. If things go really well, we could even get completely out of the hole. I check. The opponent's going to play a small ball. He makes a tiny bet of 30. I already know how this is going to go. If I call, if he only has an ace, he's probably going to check back the turn for pot control, knowing that we could definitely have trip sevens. I'll bet the river, and he'll call, getting away for a small amount. We can't allow that. I raise to 100 right now to take control and start building a large pot. If the opponent has a medium or high pocket pair in between the sevens and the ace, it's tough for us to get much more money from him anyway. If he has an ace, he'll feel obligated to call us down, thinking that I'd usually slow play trip sevens and wait until the turn to check raise. He's right, that's usually what I do against an unsophisticated, non-thinking player, but in this case, I need to be planning a few steps ahead. Plus, everyone at the table knows that I'm losing at the moment, so it should look like I'm possibly check raising light, perhaps with a hand like 9-8 or 6-5 with a backdoor flush draw. The opponent calls. If he doesn't have trips or better, he's going to be in trouble, and there won't really be any sevens in his range since there aren't any combos of ace-7 suited possible, given that the ace of hearts is out there and the 3 other suits for the 7 are all accounted for. The turn is to 8 of clubs. It's pretty much a blank. There's very little chance that we're up against pocket 8s. We're going pedal to the floor to set ourselves up nicely for the river. I bet 280 to target big aces. I might continue bluffing with suited connectors that picked up a flush or straight draw. The opponent is contemplating how to proceed. If he happens to have aces or pocket 8s, I'm going to lose piles of money, but we can't always be afraid of monsters under the bed. The middle position player calls. We've already made more money at this point than if we had just called the flop bet, it checked through on the turn, and I led river. The pot is much bigger now that we check raised, and our big bet on the turn got called. The river is the 9 of hearts. I don't like it, not because I'm worried that the opponent might have taken the lead against us. It's unlikely that he would have called our check raise on the flop, then our big bet on the turn was something like pocket 9s, but he has to be worried that some of the hands that we might have bluffed with on the flop have improved. If we check raised with Jack 10 of clubs, for instance, on the flop, we would have been able to pick up a straight draw with any 9, 8, queen or king, and obviously any club would give us the flush draw, so it's a cool hand that would have gotten there on the river. 6-5 suited is another one that gets there. It's a little tougher for us to get paid now, but I'm going for the home run anyway. I bet 1100. I wouldn't really play ace-9 this way. There's a possibility that I'd play ace-8 like this, but the main hands the opponent has to worry about is trips or a straight. 9-8 would be an interesting one to turn into a bluff as well, but I'm hoping the opponent won't be able to get away from a hand like ace-king, and he'll think that I have air, and I'm just tilt barreling, which is something that I've done on plenty of occasions. As more time passes, it becomes clear that the opponent doesn't have us beat. He won't be raising us. He's deciding whether or not to call, and he's trying to figure out how he could be beat. Yeah, don't particularly enjoy hearing that. He for sure doesn't have a full house now. If he's worried about a straight beating him, we have the next best thing, which is also going to beat him. The opponent is too sharp, and we didn't get quite the ideal run out. He folds. I like him, so I let him know that we have it this time. The opponent later tells me that he had ace-king. It's too bad that the river wasn't a total blank like a deuce. The possibility of a straight getting there allows our opponent to get away from it. If we'd have gotten called, we'd be even on the day. Instead, we still have some catching up to do. The very next hand, we're dealt pocket 10s in the big blind. The cutoff is a somewhat newer player at our table. He raises to 60. The small blind calls. We should mostly be calling, but we can 3-bet about 15% of the time. I'm in the mood for variance. I 3-bet to 300. The late position raise isn't too worrisome, and the call from the small blind is only going to be done with a combo that we're ahead of or flipping with. I expect our 3-bet to get through a lot of the time. The cutoff won't be pushed around. He 4-bets to 1060. There's a big 4-bet sizing that isn't generally done with a hand like aces that wants action. I also don't know if the cutoff would 4-bet jacks or queens, or if he just flat with them, so it really feels like kings or ace-king, which we're flipping with. He's not supposed to be 4-betting queens or jacks, and he's really only supposed to 4-bet kings about half the time. Small blind folds. Generally, I'd be happy to fold 10s to a 4-bet, but this sizing has me thinking about going a different route. I don't want to call and leave myself with a pot-sized bet remaining in my stack. I'm still mostly thinking about folding, but if we're up against ace-king, we're slightly ahead, and we already have a few hundred committed. This is when we hear something very interesting from the cutoff.
I don't have 230.
This kind of nervous table talk from the cutoff makes me think that he's trying to induce a fold so that he doesn't have to face any additional aggression or see a flop at all. It's the exact kind of thing that I'd expect the opponent to say with ace-king or another hand that's vulnerable. Generally, when people are at the top of their range with a hand like aces or kings, they're going to remain quiet. We might even be up against ace-4 or ace-5 suited. Whatever he's got, it's not something that he seems to be comfortable playing a massive pot with. This pushes me over the edge to disappoint the cutoff and force him to make a decision about whether or not he wants to play almost a $6,000 pot.
More is it? I don't think I'd be roll. I have 28 or 2900 to start with.
We don't get snap called, which is great because we're not up against aces or kings. We're clearly not up against ace 4 or ace 5 suited either though. It feels like we're up against queens or ace king. I'm really hoping that we get the fold from the opponent where he calls and we're up against ace king and flipping. I kind of would have expected a faster call from ace king though, so I'm beginning to get more concerned. We're up against exactly queens. He still doesn't like facing the 5-bet with it though.
Oh,
Those who say they can and those who say they can't are both right. Just believe in yourself, dude. Let me have this one. He's not going to let it go. Based on how long he's taken to make his decision and what he's been saying, it doesn't feel like ace king anymore. It feels like he has me crushed as he makes the call.
Alright, probably good then, I guess. I got a pair.
That is the worst news we could have gotten. His cards aren't face up, but he wouldn't have been this distraught with kings, and I don't think that he would have 4-bet or called a 5-bet shove with jacks, so I already know what he's got.
Yeah, queens are good.
Yep.
1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 1.
Yeah, let's just go once. We're running it one time to see if we can get a fortunate run out to win a gigantic pot. The flop comes king 7 deuce with 2 spades. We don't improve and we're running out of time to get there. The turn is the 5 of spades, which makes matters worse because the opponent's holding the queen of spades. We need to hit the 10 of clubs exactly to get the win. It's not looking good. The river is the jack of clubs, ending it. We lose everything in front of us to be buried on the day. It's a bigger game with the straddle on every hand, so I don't feel too bad being stuck several thousand, but I went with the read that totally backfires, and I get punished for it to lose way more than I had to. I played for a little while longer before racking up. Altogether, I lose $42.90. It's one of my bigger losses playing with orange $10 chips. I'm not happy with myself for the 10 shove, knowing that I was likely flipping or possibly crushed. When those are the two most probable outcomes, it's best to let it go and live another day. It would have been great if we somehow got the opponent to fold, but he gets me good. The next day I show up in the afternoon and get a late invite to play 2550 in Bobby's room. They recently changed it to a 10K max buy-in. I actually didn't plan on filming and only play 2 hours, but I win $3,700 to recover a substantial portion of the previous day's loss. Also, I'm giving away 10% of each cash game win that I have to people who sign up to ClubWPTGold.com using promo Brad. So in the next few days, $370 will be deposited into the account of someone who's randomly selected. It's a fun way to share wins with you viewers, so you guys have extra incentive to root me on. That's it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, I'd appreciate it if you hit the like and subscribe buttons. It helps out the channel a ton. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to let me know in the comment section. I'm happy to get back to you. Don't forget to sign up to ClubWPTGold.com using that promo Brad. That'll get you early access for phase 1 of ClubWPT Gold, which is an online site where you can play for cash prizes. And if you do deposit on there, make sure you're playing with the sweeps coins, which are SC. So those are the games that I'm in. I've seen a lot of you guys on there. I'm regularly in the 51-2 game and the 1-2-4 game. I'm battling with you. I've been playing every day for the last 7 days. I put in over 1,000 hands, which is a lot more volume than I would get if I was playing live. And some of you guys have even shared videos of yourselves playing against me, which is always hilarious. So feel free to send me those over on Instagram or Twitter.
All right, we've been in the pot against Brad Owen, Smoov Budda, check raise the river. Brad has ace 7 on the river. Let's go. How does it feel? Bang! Start a poker. Brad just beat him in the pot.
I'm giving away 10% of each cash game win that I have if you sign up using the promo Brad. You're eligible for that. So a lot of you were selected months ago. And so those amounts that you won should be deposited into your account and you can already start playing. If you haven't signed up yet, you can sign up now using my promo code and you just have to wait 24 hours in order to get verified for your account to be processed for you to be able to play online. All right, guys, one last announcement is that we've got our Lodge Championship Series coming up at the Lodge in Austin, Texas. We're doing a huge meetup game to kick things off. That'll be February 17th. I'll be there, Andrew will be there, Skull Mike, Slick Rick, Ebony Kenny, Gazzy, and a handful of other people, Drew Gonzalez. It's gonna be a really fun one. We just got our Odds Bar and Bistro up and running, so we're gonna have a proper after party after the meetup game to just hang out with everybody and celebrate. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then the whole Lodge Championship Series is gonna be amazing. I can't wait to fire in the main event. It's a 3K buy-in, and it should be a lot of fun. All right, guys, hope you're all doing well. Hope you're staying safe. Good luck at the tables. Maybe I'll see you online or potentially at the lodge. Bye.